And so, hello, dear patrons and peoples of YouTube. Today's a very special day because we're beginning two new ventures. The first of them all, of course, is I'm trying out my new camera. Kitty and I purchased the new camera, and I'm trying it out. As you know, the easiest way to learn something is to just jump in and start trying stuff out. Much as with writing, I'm gonna be trying out this new camera. But of course, that is just one venture of two. The second one, the one that I'm the most excited about, is this video. A monthly video that goes up a month in advance to my patrons, and then afterwards to YouTube. The patrons vote on a subject every month, and I make a long kind of workshop-like video about it. Before I go on anywhere, I want to let you know that the poll for next month's video is already up on my Patreon. There should be a link to that post in the description down below. If you're a patron, please make sure to go and voice your opinion. Vote on the subject of next month's workshop, as well as offer ideas for future subjects. But now, we're gonna focus just on the meat and potatoes today. Not much explaining, not much flair, not much jumping around all over the place, rambling, much as I very much love to do. Let's just take it from the top. What is the subject of this video? Stories are like constellations. What does that mean? That is the very special name I have for an exercise of mine. An exercise that has helped me in the past to come up with more characters, refine story ideas, and also focus on the revision of a particular story. It's not a jack of all trades, it's very focused as a matter of fact. It's a special way of looking at your story. And I'm going to be sharing that with you today. Now, this is going to be a little bit silly because we're going to jump out of this view and you're going to get to look at my desktop because this exercise requires, in order for me to show you how this is done, I kind of have to draw, or rather I have to just write out a small diagram. So for the remainder of the video, I'm going to jump over to my desktop view. No more of my face, but you're going to get to see my actual desktop and we're going to do a little bit of doodling together. Okay? Okay. And so, it continues. Hello there, everyone. Welcome to my desktop. I'm going to be using Clip Studio Paint just to kind of illustrate what I'm going to be showing you. So, what do I mean by stories are like constellations? Keep that in mind. The punchline won't come until the end. But I want you to, if you haven't already, you may want to consider checking out my guide to how to plan a novel, because I'm going to be talking about things from there. Lightly touching on my guide to how to plan a novel. One of the core concepts is to, first and foremost, you consider the things that excite you the most. And I usually recommend people to come up with 3 things that they love the most and kind of create a story idea based on them. Oh, wow, this is weird. I feel like one of those like YouTube channels that just have drawings on them all the time. And those 3 ideas kind of become the core elements, the root elements of your story. If you want to think of them as how stories are kind of like trees, then you could say those 3 elements become the seed from which, the story idea grows from. I'm not going to be doing drawing because I write books. I'm not a drawer. Yes, that's exactly what I meant to say. I write, I don't draw. But I need this as a way to illustrate what I'm trying to say. Now, let's say that you know my guide to how to plan a novel, and let's say that even if you don't, you can play along. I'm gonna be giving you the 3 elements, the 3 core elements of a story idea, and I'm gonna work with you, show you how I do this special writing exercise. Again, what is the core of this writing exercise? The goal of this writing exercise is to help you if you need to come up with more characters for your story. It's good if you need to need to define the story idea. If you have a concept, if you have the 3 elements but you don't know how to make them work together, if you also need to revise the story, this is very useful at the end of the whole process to help you review the core elements of your story. And also if you need to expand it. One common question that I get all the time is that, like, hey Max, I have the 3 concepts that I think are the most fun, but I don't know how to turn them into something that I can work with. Or more commonly, or one which happens the most often, is that, hey Max, I have like, I've got the 3 things that, I find the most fun, but I do not have people for them. I don't have characters for them. Oh, can I do this? Oh, there you go. I don't have people for them. Oh, God. Oh, God, that's terrible. See, but this is why I write, I don't draw. I have an idea, but I don't have characters for it. This here is what I consider to be my solution. And it's a very slightly meta way of looking at things. And I don't like to look at writing from a meta point of view, but sometimes you need a bit of a meta solution. And so, here we are. The first thing, let's just take it from the top. And also, this is a very personal, like, exercise. So, like, if you have questions, if I don't make something clear, please let me know in the comments down below and I'll clarify it for you. Let us begin with the story idea. Let's pretend that I have a story idea. I mean, I have several story ideas, but let's just say, here are the 3 root elements of the new story idea that I'm working on, okay? The element number 1, again, the elements are the things that excite you the most. They can be concepts, ideas, scenes. And one thing that excites me is the idea of a world of adventure. Also, oh no, Max is gonna be super petty right now. If you're wondering what is the font that I use for all of my things, it is Collective. That's the font that I use for everything, and I love that font, so here we go. I love a world of adventure. In an enormous world that even though there's light and there's darkness, there's this sense that there's something out there. And there's people, and if you're brave enough to try and go get it, you can. And that excites me right now. World of adventure. The other core element of the story is a land of secrets. What is out there? What lies, beyond that hill over there? What lies deep inside of those ancient ruins that they tell you not to go to? What's out there? I'm also intrigued by the idea of a world where people don't know where certain things came from. What are those ruins? Who lived there? We don't know. What is that enormous statue laying out in the middle of the wasteland? What are those strange structures out in the middle of the ocean? Who made them? We don't know. Again, core element 1, a world of adventure. A big world full of dangers. And a land with secrets. We don't know everything that's out there. And maybe someone wants to find out. The last core element that excites me, that I find intriguing and that I would like to expand on, is we are the hunted. Generally in stories about this kind of like wilderness, kind of like humans are kind of in control and they're fine. But I'm intrigued more in a situation in which the humans are the prey. The world is a world of dangers, and it's scary, and you do not want to leave civilization. You want to stay there. You want to live that nice, safe life inside of the city walls, and out there is real scary. Out there is real scary. What's out there? It could be terrible things. It could be monsters. It could be a wilderness so terrifying that the very idea of nature has people shaking. Storms that are uncontrollable, wildfires that just happen for no reason, the ocean itself being this idea of a beast that moves erratically. You can't control it. Don't you dare try to set sail. Stuff like that. These 3 are the core elements. The 3 things that excite me to write. A world of adventure. A land of secrets. And we are the hunted. Humans are not in control. The line between humanity existing and going extinct is real thin. Anything could toss the balance. One final charge at the remnants of humanity could just have us erased from existence, much like the other ruins that lay out in the wasteland. Now, in the usual process, you would arrive here and you would think to yourselves, okay, these are the things that excite me. And, I'm super excited about them. How do I turn these into people? How do I turn these into the characters that are going to be at the core of the story? Well, generally, I'm the kind of person that, sometimes I come in with a story idea, or I come in with characters. So this doesn't happen very often, but sometimes it does. And that is why, kind of in my heart, I developed this little exercise. A system, you could say. Also, if I'm missing something, or if I'm being, I'm just gonna say this right now. I use this program for drawing, mostly for stuff in DangoDO. And if I'm doing something wrong, please just bear with me, okay? I'm just trying to explain this in the easiest manner possible. Now, we're gonna get real meta. So if you've been working along, if you've been trying out your own stuff or your own story idea, it's time to get scratch paper. Or draw on a system like this one. I was originally gonna have like a camera looking down at a piece of paper, but then I realized that would look really bad, especially with dealing with white balance and contrast, and then the camera focusing on my hand instead of a paper. So here we are. The thing I want you to draw, and I know drawing sucks, but we're gonna work this out together, okay? I want you, where's the line thickness? There we go. Okay, let's see if this looks good. I want you to draw, it's a little big, but it's fine. I want you to draw a triangle, okay? I want you to draw a triangle. Generally, I would do it like a upside down triangle, but it's fine. Ultimately, you want to create a triangle. And I'm gonna make a draft layer over this. And let's do like a different color. Let's do the primary colors, as a matter of fact. Now, let's consider that each of these three elements is one point in the triangle. So, I'm just gonna say that this part over here is number 1. This corner represents the world of adventure. Now, Max, this red is more pink than anything else, yeah. Because red-pink is better than just full-on red. And I'm gonna say that this yellow over here is the land of secrets. And last, but by no means least, we have this corner over here. Excuse me, my terrible sketching. We are the hunted. These, you need to use colors, by the way. You can actually just like label them. This is the world of adventure, the land of secrets, and we are the hunted. Keep in mind, and in your heart, that they are not directly opposed. Together, they are forming this kind of boundary, and inside of it is your story. I used to, kind of in a comical way, refer to this as kind of a spell. Think of it as casting a spell. You think of the 3 elements, and you open a gate into another world. I know that's a little silly, but I like to think of it like that sometimes. It also helps kind of ground it. Now, generally, when you have a story idea like this, you already have characters. But let's pretend you don't. You have concepts, but no grounded characters. Now, the following is not a rule. Oh, please, for the love of God, there are no rules to writing. This is just an exercise I do to help me brainstorm. There are no rules. But what I like to do is that I like to imagine the center of this triangle. The center of this triangle. And I ask myself, what person stands in the middle of a world of adventure, a land of secrets, and we are the hunted? If there was a person who equally represented all of these traits, represented by being right in the middle of all of them, who would that be? What kind of person lives in a world of adventure, is intrigued by a land of secrets, and knows very well that they are being hunted, that humanity is not safe? Now, at this point, I would probably do a bunch of brainstorming, and I've already done a little bit just to help the video go along, and I'm thinking, if there was a person in the middle of all this, and I'm gonna just kind of write it out here. If there was someone in here, I would want it to be a young person. A young person who wants to go out and see things. Because they're curious about what lies ahead. They're curious about those things they've seen, the etchings on the walls, the stories that no one knows where they came from. Who knows that there's more out there, but is also terrified. Because they know very well, there are monsters out there. And listen, it's scary in civilization because people are scary. But at least people are predictable. You don't know what you're gonna face out there. And I would like this to be a young person. Someone who's young, someone who hasn't been made fully bitter by the reality that you're out there, you're gonna die out there. And by maybe the inability that, like, how much can you find? And really, is that answer worth it? And I'm going to refer to this person as, let me see if I can write it really good, young one. The young one lies here, at the center of everything. Now, the most astute of you would realize, wait a minute, Max. It's almost as though you're talking as someone in the center of everything. Someone who might serve as a good main character. Yeah, now you're thinking. Now you're cooking with fire. This is not a rule, by the way. And I'm going to tell you right now, I've written a lot of stories where the main character is not here. Maybe somewhere like here, or here, or here. Close, but also far away. This is not a rule. This is just something that I like to think about. And this may not even be the main character at the end of it all. It may just be someone close to the main character. Right now, we're just figuring out the people in the world. And I remember what I say about stories. You want to create what is the most exciting. What excites you the most about a story. And right now, as I am brainstorming live with you next to me, I would like a story about someone right in the middle. Someone caught between wanting to see the world out there and find out secrets, but is also terrified. And now, when we have our center, who may or may not be the main character, we don't know. You don't know. I don't know. It is now time to brainstorm and to see, well, what else can we have? Now, generally, for a thing like this, I like to go into extremes. Absolute, complete extremes. Because it helps you ground your world. And it helps you capture the absolute extremes of the storytelling. If you have a world about these three elements, what character would represent the biggest extreme? What character represents we are the hunted? And I feel that in a story like this, thinking what would be the most exciting, I would like someone who has seen what's out there. Someone who has been scarred, and someone who has seen the horror that lies out there and never wants to see it ever again. Someone who is so focused on this point that they are unrelated to this here. They don't care about the adventure. They don't care about the secrets. They know what it's like, and they have seen what it's like. And I think I'm gonna call this character the scarred one. They have scars. Some of them are visible, some of them are not. There are things about them that people can tell, and there are things about them that are invisible until you get to talk to them. Kind of like until you see me write things out, you realize how terrible my handwriting is. But that's okay. This is supposed to be an N. But that's fine. Listen, I'm a writer. I don't have to write good. I just have to revise it good. We have in this corner the scarred one. Someone who has seen how terrible it is and wants to never go out there ever again. What else? What about the world of adventure? What about this corner up here? What about that feeling of wanting to see what's out there? Of wanting to explore the wilderness? Of wanting to see what lies just beyond that horizon? And I'm thinking, what kind of character would encompass that? I think it would have to be a character, again, might as well be opposed to these other 2 points. How can you want to see the world of adventure, but not care about its secrets, and not care about the fear? And I'm brainstorming, I'm thinking, life right now as a matter of fact, that it would have to be someone who has been in a privileged position. Someone who hasn't had to worry about things. Someone who doesn't really care about learning, may just even want to get out, and is not afraid of the consequences. And I'm thinking of someone who has heard the tales, wants to leave, wants to escape. Not for knowledge, and not at all threatened by the things that lie out there. And I'm thinking that there are various ways we can go with this. In my brain, I'm already brainstorming, like, okay, it could either be like a person in a super like high level position. You could even say like a person high up in the hierarchy, a sovereign, a prince, a princess, someone out there who is like doing so well that they just want to see what's out there. But of course, in my heart, I also love the scum of the earth, the people down in the bottom of it all who have nothing to lose. So in my heart, I can either go princess or I can go thief. And you know me, I love thieves. But for now, while we're still thinking, I don't want to set anything to stone. That's why I'm just using big terms. I'm going to say the privileged one. If I can... When did my pen change color? It's fine. The privileged one. Because I'm not going to try to write privileged right here in this particular space. It's fine. Listen. I don't have to write good. It's fine. Listen. Let's focus on the actual task ahead. Lastly, we have one more point. The Land of Secrets. What kind of character encompasses this? What character encompasses the secrets out there? The worlds that lie beyond those ruins, the stories, almost encompassing the lore, the idea that people could look at the ocean and be terrified of it, because it just devours people. And worst of all, there are monsters lying down there in the water. Who would even try to go down there? And I'm thinking, because again, this person, by looking at kind of like the diagram we have here, they would be opposed to the idea of adventure and opposed to the idea of the monsters. So I'm thinking of someone who doesn't even want to go out there, and clearly doesn't even care about the monsters. Someone who may even care, you could say, someone who cares about the fantasy of it all. Someone who cares about the... How do I say this? The dream, the fantasy of hearing all those things. And in my brain, I can feel myself going to one or two different places. Because, these can be individual characters. Or I could combine them. Again, we're thinking of big terms here. Because we're starting with elements and we don't have characters. Generally, for a story, I would have a character. And I would just plop them wherever they fit and find their relationships. But before I get ahead of myself, I'm thinking someone who romanticizes the secrets out there. And I'm thinking of either a scholar, a learned person. A scholar, or I'm thinking maybe a bard, someone telling stories, someone filling the emptiness of the tavern with stories of what lies out there. Tales, tragic tales of romance and glory of the people brave enough to go out there into the wilderness, but they themselves do not want to do that. And I'm not sure. Again, I don't know. A scholar would be nice, but a bard would also be nice. And in my head, I'm thinking, well, maybe they can be both. But let's just call them the storyteller. Yeah, it's getting a little busy, but it's fine. So right now we have the young one. Someone who stands between all these elements and seeks to see this world and to explore the secrets, to learn about them, but knows that there's dangers out there. We have the scarred one who knows the dangers that lie beyond. The privileged one who just wants to see what's out there. And the storyteller who knows of it, but cares not maybe for all these other elements. Now, generally when you start with a story idea, and you already have some characters in your head, you may end up plotting them. Let me actually just do a little bit of fidgeting here just to kind of break down the layers, because you know, if you have done drawing, you know that like layers can end up being really silly. So let me just delete this on this layer, so that way on this other layer we still have like all the points on the diagram, whatever they may mean. I have no idea what this diagram may mean. Okay, here we go. There we go. And I am indeed naming the layers just for anyone out there who wants me to really name the layers. Now, when you have a story idea, you may end up with characters that you already know. And you could plop them. Let's say, for instance, that I myself, I already had a character when I first thought of this story idea. I had a character of someone who is fending off against the dangers outside. Someone who may not particularly be interested in adventure, may want to find out the secrets, but ultimately they are more related to this point, not in the form that they're terrified of them, like the scarred one, but more that they're trying to defend people. And I was thinking in my head of a hunter. Someone, or a hunter of the hunters. Someone who goes out there and is hunting down the creatures in the immediate vicinity of civilization. The kind of creatures that would sneak into a town or a city and cause havoc, you know? Because it doesn't matter how well protected you are, if one of these creatures sneaks in and murders half a dozen people, then there is no peace. You can't sleep soundly at night. And we have someone that I'm just going to call for now the hunter. And yes, we're getting a little busy here, but it's fine. That's why I separated the layers. It's fine. And I'm feeling that this person, and I'm actually, just for the sake of keeping things color coded, just for the sake of everyone involved, I want to make it green just so it stands out. There. That's not what I meant to do. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Listen. There we go. All right. Now, where would this character go on the scale? Because the young one goes here, the scarred one goes here, the privileged one, the storyteller. I think they kind of fit maybe a little bit, because maybe at their heart they like the idea of adventure, but they've seen the reality of how rough the world is. So I would see that they're somewhere between here. A little bit between the land of adventure and a little bit between We Are the Hunted. I'm going to place them like right here on the scale. Just about right here. And it is at this point, because let's just say that this is the character that I started with. This is the character that I'm going to make it like real big. This is the character that Max said, trying to get that line right. This is the character that I started with. This is a character that in my heart, I kind of wanted to write about. A character who wants to defend people, and maybe they care a little bit about this, but let's be real, they understand the dangers out there. Maybe not the character who's the main character per se, but maybe a focal point of view. Someone who interested me enough to even start this whole adventure to begin with. Or the point of view that excites me the most. That's a very important thing to keep in mind. We're just writing out interesting points of view in this world, in this story. And remember, one of the things to make a world feel like it's real, like it actually truly exists, is to have it focused on people. Because we relate to people. We empathize with people. And and you know me, I am most excited when a story is about characters. The setting, although we have a setting that may be incredibly interesting, to me, it matters not if we don't have characters. So, here we have the hunter, the scarred one, the young one, the privileged one, and the storyteller. It is at this point now, because I find in my heart that when I filled up the corners, I start thinking about the smaller details. The points of view that I'm missing entirely. The points of view that, like, when I look at this story, I'm starting to picture a world, okay? I'm starting to picture a location, a place where there's seemingly normal people and privileged people. People who look at things longingly, with this idea of, like, the romanticized nature of, like, oh yes, the world. I hope you can see my mouse. Otherwise, this is going to be a little silly. But the romanticized idea of, like, oh, the adventurers who went out there. Oh, and how quick their lives were taken so soon, when they could have found out more about the mysteries. And the sensible people who are like, no, there are monsters out there. What are you talking about? That's ridiculous. Half of people died last night. Just last night alone. What are you thinking? And now, it's pretty much at this point where I would start plotting out ideas for alternative characters. Extra little side nooks that we're missing. And you can kind of almost imagine them here, right? We're missing a couple of points, a couple of spots in the narrative that could be filled up. Just to clarify, the idea is not to just fill up the map, the diagram with dots, with characters, but rather just to find exciting points of view or parts of the narrative that you might have missed entirely. In the midst of me just reviewing my notes, I remember that I added a little note about the idea, someone caught between the land of secrets and the world of adventure, someone who has gone out there, someone who has seen what the world is like. And maybe he became famous for it, or maybe became infamous for it. I love the idea of someone who has already experienced the big joy and has become a little bit dulled by it, or a little bit bitter and jaded. And I'm thinking in my heart, I'm imagining an adventurer, someone who already went out there and who looked through caves and ruins, and they didn't find anything, or lost more than they gained. Someone who lost people, but at the end of it all, maybe still long for it. Or, I'm also thinking, a complete fraud. Someone who claimed to have gone out there, but absolutely didn't. Someone who claimed to be a fantastic hero, Oh, how many tales they speak of this hero, but it's absolute phony. And that sounds more exciting now that I say it out loud. And I'm thinking they're kind of somewhere between the world of adventure and the land of secrets. I would point them somewhere around here. I'm thinking right about here. And we're gonna call them the imposter. The imposter. Of course, you would probably write this out in a much more pretty manner than me, but it's fine. Now, you may realize at this very point that you're developing a list of characters, a list of players in your story, a list of people who are going to be launching the story into a very interesting direction. Now, before I advance to the next point, because, by the way, we're about halfway done. There's one more point. There's one more thing that I have to add that is just in my heart and I can't let it go. And I'm picturing, I'm actually gonna go all the way. I'm gonna go all the way and add the character that I find fully envelops the world, the We Are the Hunted part of the story idea. The character who does not only define it, but envelops that. And I want to call that the monster. Because listen, I feel that in this story, either A, someone finds the monster outside in the wilderness, or B, the monster comes to find you. There's no way I'm writing this story and a monster's not gonna show up. A big, hulking beast, a creature as ancient as time, is gonna show up and screw up everybody's day. Everybody's day. No one gets unscathed in this story. Why? Because that's what I think would be the most fun. And remember, in your heart, please, if you're gonna take the time to tell a story, don't tell the story you think everyone's gonna like. Because let me tell you something. The idea that everyone would like the same thing is silly. It's a joke. And I don't care what everyone finds funny. I want to know what you think, what you thought would be the most exciting, fun story idea to write. Because when you write with those feelings in your heart, the words are gonna pour, the pages are gonna fill up. Because you're excited, because you're having fun, and you're gonna come back to the story. If you have one chance to tell a story, if you're gonna spend all of your time working on this, I want you to go all out. And I want there to be a gosh doodly darn monster in this story. A big one too. You know what? The big monster. It's big and scary. And remember, it represents the third element in the root idea. Something so terrible and scary, so terrifying, that it could bring humanity to the brink of. It would have to have a horn, maybe 3 horns, 15 horns. Could bring humanity to the brink of extinction. Why? Because this is what is exciting to me. This is what I think would make for a fun story. And it's right there, almost out of the diagram. The monster. And now, hear me out. Now we are heading into what may be one of the funnest. Actually, I'm going to make this super black. Now we're heading out into some really, really exciting places. Because listen, we've got this diagram here. Let me just maybe zoom out just a little bit. We got, now anyone out, maybe someone who's maybe, and actually I want this to be yellow actually. No, what's a good color? Pink. Pink is a good color. I want, now someone out there, maybe looking at this and say, in a cynical way, Max, this is just a bunch of dots on a diagram. You have made a list of characters that are just by themselves and have no relations. This has been a royal waste of time. Oh, ye of little faith. We're about to take this to the next level. Let me just take a sip of water, and then we'll get there. What are characters without connections? Without relationships? Characters don't exist in a vacuum, and especially in storytelling, they should most definitely not exist in a vacuum. They exist in a world, all of them together. And if they are sharing one story, they should influence one another. They should all be part of the story. And now we're going to take a moment and we're going to draw lines between these characters to help us imagine their connections, to help us imagine what binds them together, what makes them one. And of course, I'm going to tell you this right now. When I'm looking at this diagram, the first thing I'm imagining, the first thing that comes to freaking mind is A to B. Boom. What does that mean? The scarred one, the person who realizes how scary the world is and how terrifying things are out there, knows the monster, has seen it, might have even fought it, and failed terribly. Their scars are proof of that. Now, I'm thinking, how do they know each other? What relation do they have? I'm thinking that the scarred one might have been part of a group. Part of the world's attempt at holding back the oncoming force of creatures. The wilderness itself, as it is kind of rising up. Grass and rock and lightning and storm. Tearing apart their walls, their city walls, the remnants of civilization. A group of people fighting back. And clearly, the hunter knows about it. The hunter, I imagine the hunter and the scarred one might be old friends. They might even be related. One might have mentored the other. Or, it might be a different point of view. I saw you when you came back that night. When you barely came back alive. I saw you that time. And what did the hunter feel? How did that change them? To realize that it's not all just adventure and secrets and grave robbing. And seeing the beautiful hills of green grass. Just before the sunset of orange and purple and red. No, there's monsters out there. And they've seen it. The point of this line is to remember that there's a relation between the hunter and the scarred one. They know each other, or one knows the other. But regardless of that, whether it's a positive or a negative relationship, they share one. And that's a good point. Now, I'm going to tell you right off the start, there is a particular line that I saw the instant I wrote this down, and I'm actually gonna have to move a character just so they don't overlap. Remind me never to live stream myself drawing, cause oof, that would be rough. Oh, here we go. I'm gonna move the imposter just a little bit down, just a little bit down, just to help the point. I think super easily the privileged one and the storyteller share a connection. Absolutely. They are almost from different worlds, as you can imagine from the huge line in the diagram, but they know each other. Absolutely. I almost would imagine that the storyteller, whether it is a bard or a scholar, has influenced the privileged one, has shown them a world of possibilities, and has given them an out. Oh, how beautiful the world is outside. Oh, it's not grimy like these streets. Oh, outside, there are hills of rolling green grass, and trees as tall as castles. The privileged one daydreaming, imagining the stories of the storyteller. And I imagine, clearly, there is one connection here that we can't ignore. They must know the stories of the imposter. They must know the stories of this hero who went out there and who explored the wilderness and came back to tell the tale. A legend in the flesh. Now, one personal rule that I have when we start connecting dots is to go first and foremost with your gut feeling, but do not try to connect everything to everything. Mostly because I can end up feeling with a story that feels really narrow. Because I know all these characters live within the boundaries of the same story, but they need not know each other. Because a part of me in my heart was thinking maybe the imposter and the storyteller know each other. Maybe they have a past. And while that is nice, I feel like that might be narrowing the world a little bit too much. If I had to pick between the imposter and the privileged one having a relationship, or it may be a one-way relationship, but that's fine. Or the storyteller and the imposter, I would rather it be with the privileged one. And that's just absolutely pure subjectiveness. If I must pick one, I will take this. I'll take this over this. Mostly because, I don't know, part of me, it always feels a little weird in a story when where everyone knows everybody. And I seek to not create those kind of stories, because a part of me, I kind of don't like them. It makes the world feel very narrow and very small. When it's a huge world of possibilities, why will everybody know each other? And what I mean by that is that, like, oh, the storyteller knows this other character, and I feel like that kind of creates something artificial. They may see each other in passing, but this line is important. This is not a line of I know you. This is a line of you and I have a relationship. This is not just I've seen you perform your storytelling. This, you and I, we know each other. The same way that the monster and the scarred one know each other. And no one else in this story shares this relationship in the exact same way. And now I'm imagining, I'm thinking, I'm brainstorming. And the next connection that I can imagine, the next connection that immediately comes to mind, I would like there to be a relationship between the privileged one and our young one. I'm picturing both young people. And that's a natural connection. That's a immediate natural connection between the two of them. They're two young people. Might even both go to the same place. I mean, it might be a small town, a small city. Or there's a link between them. But I think it will be exciting for both of them to be together. For both of them to find the story, or see the story through their own points of view connected. The privileged one and the young one. They may be the same age, which is funny because we nicknamed this character the young one, but remember, that's just a nickname. That's just a little title we have for them. And now, the last point of view. The last thing that comes to mind, I think, that we're grounding this character. We're grounding the character in the center of the story as someone who is, you could say, in the middle of it all. Torn between, you can almost see the line. You can almost see it. You can almost see, let me just make a new layer. You can almost see the line between the world of fantasy and the romanticized nature of the secrets that lie out there, and the reality of this world. The reality of the evils that lie out there, the monsters, those who are fighting it, and those who have fought and failed against the evils of the world. You can almost see the line right here, in the character that grounds all of them. And this here, in my heart, is good enough to start. We have characters, and remember, because in my guide to how to plan a novel, you don't just make characters willy-nilly. You come up with concepts, and then you start asking questions. And as you see right now, you have a list of concepts. There are not people yet, but we're getting there. We know things about the young one from this exercise. We know that they share a relationship with the hunter, and that they know the privileged one. They may be friends, they may not be friends at all, but we have a world with a distinct line between the fantasy, between the romanticized view of the world out there, the privileged view of the world out there, and the realism, the realistic view of the world. It's scary out there. But isn't it all so beautiful? Isn't there a song, a poem about how tragic our lives are? But there are those who know, with stark bitterness, just how rough the world outside is. And if you know my plan to how to get my guide to how to plan a novel, excuse me, you know that the following step here would be to take character by character and write down everything you know and everything you don't know. Answering questions, giving them form, because right now this is not a character. This here is an amorphous form, a thing. In my mind, they're almost like a blur of different character concepts. Sometimes I picture a really young person. Sometimes I picture just a teenager. No matter what, they're young. They're people older than them. And it serves to ground them. Because you can imagine people being like, oh, you're just young. Oh, you haven't seen, you haven't suffered like the rest of us have suffered. And remember, of course, that these concepts can change. As you brainstorm, you may realize things. As you write down what you think is true, what you think might be true about these characters, they may start to change. The hunter may change shape. Their storyteller may actually become a full-on scholar, or may retain the bard form that I imagined in my mind at first. Remember that this here is just us helping us brainstorm. The purpose of this, again, is to help us brainstorm characters. When we have the elements of a story, we brainstorm the characters that should belong here. The characters that make the most sense and that are the most fun. Again, when I sat down here half an hour ago, it was to tell you about things that excited me. And we could fill this diagram with multiple characters. But that's not inherently the point. There are questions that arise. What about the young one's parents? What about the family of the scarred one? What about the privileged one? Are they truly a princess? Are they a prince? Are they just the child of a powerful merchant? Or are they just a thief, like I pictured in my mind? Are they both? This here is the beginning. Just like you have a seed of a story idea, within it there are little seeds, smaller seeds. Because inside of that seed there's a world. And the boundaries here are just drawn out for you. Again, the following step to this would be to take each character, write down what you think is true about them, and what you're not sure about. Where are the young one's parents? Anyone out there, already clever enough, already thinking, I could say, if I was looking at this, where are the young one's parents? Maybe all that's left of them is the hunter. Maybe they are siblings. Maybe they are not, but they are still taking care of them. Maybe these three characters are all related. Maybe not. The deciding factor is not what is right, is what it feels the most fun to you. What makes this story the most fun to write. And also remember, as we go on from here on forwards, I want you to keep in mind the most important thing, really. The most important thing of them all is that the story is always right. This here, I know this may seem like heresy, but you know all this work that we just did? And all the work you're gonna do afterwards? It's nothing. It is absolutely a speck of dust in the void of space. A tiny little thing. Compared to the magic of storytelling. If, in the midst of the story idea, you realize that these characters do not share a relationship, that's fine. Do not come back to this diagram. Because it doesn't matter. The story matters the most. This diagram here, there's a reason. I'm going to tell you. I'm going to get a little vulgar right now. I don't call the whole brainstorming phase of my story, or the whole planning process. I don't call it planning. I don't call it outlining. I don't call it sorting out my ideas. In my planning process, when I schedule the tasks for a book, I call this BSing. I'm gonna let you wonder what that stands for. Because at the end of it all, we're coming up with ideas. This may not be true. This may not be true at all. But it's better to start with something in your head. With something better. Something that feels a little bit more grounded. It's easier to fill in this box than to fill the entirety of space. It's a little easier to start when you have boundaries. It's easier to corral your cats than to keep them out in the wilderness. That metaphor falls apart a little bit when you think about it, but don't think about it. What I want you to take from this, before I go walk over to the final parts of this explanation, is that this here is just a guide. It's not where you're gonna go. It's not the guide to the treasure. Because sometimes you may start writing and you may just get there. Or you may end up somewhere else entirely. Writing is the act of discovery. And you have to treat it as such. Okay? And now, for the final part of this little silliness. The thing that everyone has already realized, because I am not clever enough to, or you're way too clever, and I can't just hide this from you. Stories are like constellations, in the way that they are made of little things, little characters, little things, single points in the night sky that all come together through their relationships, through the bonds that they share, and they create something more. Our stories are like constellations, because they're grounded on a single point, or maybe more. But ultimately, they're connected. It is a story about people, the same way that constellations are made of stars. You cannot have a story without characters, and you cannot have a constellation without stars. Alright? I hope that this has proven, if anything, a little insightful, a little fun, and I hope that you have enjoyed this tiny little conversation. Let me make this pink again. One more thing before I leave, because I mentioned several points, and I'm just kind of covering my bases. What the purpose of this, again, is to help you find characters when you have an idea without characters. I literally just walked you through my brainstorming process. I started with the root elements of a story idea. I plotted them out on a diagram, where each one was the extreme of that story idea. And I found characters who were part of it. Sometimes you may not have someone in the center, and that's okay. Sometimes I find that my characters end up being at these points, and that's fine. Sometimes my characters are a loop, and that's fine. For Masks of Glass, it was a lot like this, because that story has 3 characters in the form of Claire, Jay, and Yamato, and the story kind of looked like this. I mean, actually, the story kind of looked like this, honestly, because Claire was the center of that story, but that's fine. And that's okay. When it comes to the revision, this helps you see what the themes of your story are. And I know that that's a big-headed way of looking at things, but when it comes to because when you're writing, you don't care about these things, and I don't want you to care about those things. But when it comes to revision, this gives you a really big point of view. Because if I was revising a story and I was reviewing my original diagram, I would see what changed and what didn't. And if I was revising, if I was about to revise, I would notice this right here. I would notice this enormous void between the fantasy of the world, and the reality of how deadly it is, how dangerous it is. I just see this from years of just brainstorming and revising stories. I just see it. And I would almost say that these two kind of become one part of the story, and this becomes the other. But that's, of course, more stuff that I don't want you to worry about. And I don't want you to make you feel like this is something you have to do. This is something that helps me sometimes. And sometimes I just jump into a story without brainstorming. And that's okay. These are tools. Tools to help you. Tools to help you get from the idea of, imagining things. This is supposed to be a brain, by the way. I don't know if you can figure that out. From this to, then that was supposed to be a pencil, but that's fine. We're not playing Pictionary right now, okay? Some sparkles. Get the ideas onto the page, because that's all that matters. You can spend years coming up with a cool story idea, and let me tell you something, it doesn't matter if you don't put it to paper. So put it to paper. This sometimes helps me review things. And the biggest use for this, honestly, is to come up with characters. Because sometimes you have a cool story idea, but no one to drive it. And let me tell you something. I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. I don't care about how cool this setting may be. I don't care about how interesting the lore behind the origin of the monsters, or the secrets, or why things are the way they are. I don't give a crap about it if I do not care about the characters. Without them, there is no story. And I'm going to remind you once again about my wonderful creative writing professor. Oh my god, that's the wrong layer. Relatable, huh? I want to remind you of a wonderful professor I had named Marcy. And she taught me that character as in like the development of your characters and who they are, does not come from plot. Plot happens when your characters are doing things. When your characters are taking action, making choices, and facing the consequences of both. When that happens, the story happens. When that happens, things get going. Things advance. The story gets interesting. And events happen. But you can't get there without characters. And there are people out there who tell you about plot and how plot is the most important part of storytelling, and I don't know. From my point of view, I think, in my heart, I think these are the most important. So for now, I'm gonna send it over to Real Max. I hope you had fun, and I hope this has been helpful. And there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this small little workshop, and I hope that if anything I gave you another point of view. This exercise has helped me a lot in the past, and it's a nice little thing to just flesh out story ideas, to look at your story idea from a different point of view, and also to bring characters that really do encapsulate the things that excited you the most about that story. Now, as we're rolling to the formal outro, I want to let you know that if you enjoyed this video, these videos, the Patreon monthly videos, available a month in advance. If you're watching this on YouTube, right now you could go to my Patreon, pledge $1, get to watch my regular videos a week in advance, and also watch these workshops an entire month before they go up on YouTube. And there's more. You get to also vote on the future subjects and topics of these little workshops. So, if that sounds exciting, please consider going to patreon.com/mkaren. You help me make more of this content, and you get cool perks along the way. But for now, I want to thank you for tagging along. I've taken enough of your time. I hope you have a lovely day, and that you go out there, you keep on writing, you keep on telling stories, and keep on, star by star, giving shape to those constellations only you and only you can.